Welcome everyone, my name's Daniel King. This is the roundup show of the round one of the Tal Memorial Tournament that's taking place in Moscow from today until the 25th of November. It's a 10-player all-play-all tournament, including some of the finest players in the world: Carlsen, Anand, Aronian, Kramnik, Ivanchuk, Karyakin, Nakamura, Svidler, Gelfand and Nepomniachtchi. So this is a tremendous field. There are no weak players at all. Any of those 10 can beat any of the others. So this is a really cracking tournament and is the first in a series of great tournaments. Coming up after the Tal Memorial, of course, there's the London Chess Classic at the beginning of December, and then after that in January is Vaikanze. So there we go. It's and in each of those tournaments, fantastic lineup. Okay, let's crack on. Kramnik against Nepomniachtchi. That's the first game I'd like to look at. Kramnik opened. Oh, I should say also, if you've got any suggestions, any comments, then please do write in, and I'll of course try to include them in my commentary. Okay, so here we go. Kramnik played knight f3 and we've got an English position, and now Nepomniachtchi played pretty aggressive move, e5, clamping white in the center and heading for this very trusted so-called Botvinnik system, fianchetto, and then this clamp of pawns in the center. This was first developed by Michal Botvinnik. It's a very respectable system with both white and black. And Kramnik is going for a3 and b4, which is okay, a very sound idea to nibble away at black's center. And now Nepomniachtchi really goes for it. He plays pawn to e4. If you take, well, this gives white exactly what he wants. Fantastic pressure on the A and B files, pressure on the center as well. This is already a very difficult position. So, for example, if the knight goes back to c6, then knight e4 is terribly strong, and d6 is caving in. And this gives white exactly what he wants. Okay, what else could you play? Knight here, then queen a4 is disastrous. Training Day says Kramnik must have expected this variation because Nepomniachtchi played this line recently a lot. Okay, I didn't know that. But anyway, it's not a surprise. Anyway, it's kind of a normal position. And okay, e4. This sharpens the game. The problem with e4, of course, is that this pawn, it could be a little bit vulnerable. And to protect the pawn, black plays f5. Of course, these pawns look absolutely wonderful, but there is a huge disadvantage in that you open up this line, and black's king is looking a little bit drafty now. And as we'll see, that could have been quite a big factor in this game, but we'll come on to that in a second. But personally, I love to play positions like this, with the white pieces, I mean, because I feel that I always prefer to play with a safe king than a wobbly king. I know black has certain compensation for this, but it's just a preference of mine. Okay, let's rattle on with the game because it's fantastically complicated, and I want to get to the critical moment in the game. So Kramnik has managed to destroy the center, but well, he's lost pawns here. But again, I repeat, black's king could be a little bit insecure. Now, if white can get the knight to e3 and to clamp black on this central square, then this could be very nice indeed for white. So I think black had to push forward, and now we've got a very, very sharp position indeed. And you know, again, at first glance, I was liking this position for white. So, for example, if here maybe you take, this kind of position I think could be very attractive for white, because I think white's plan is easy. Let's build up on the pawn. The rook already has a nice open file, nice knight in the center, very nice pieces. That seems a very pleasant position for white to play, and above all, a safe king, and not such a safe king here. But Nepomniachtchi had calculated very sharply and played bishop takes e2. Well, okay, we have to take this. Now, this was the idea, d3. And now the queen came to g4. Both players had to calculate very sharply indeed. And he took the bishop on b2 and then rook d1. Very sharp indeed. And I was getting very excited about white's position when I was doing the live commentary on this game. I was thinking that this is going to be a classic Kramnik game. Recently, in the last couple of years, Kramnik has been playing these really, really sharp positions, and I thought this was another classic. So I was getting very carried away looking at these variations after rook takes, which is a plausible way for black to play. You have a rook and a knight against the queen, and this fantastic passed pawn on c2. But the more I looked at this, the more I didn't quite trust it for black. Now maybe this is playable, but I think the problem is that black's pieces are so loose and the king is so exposed, and the queen is just like a guided missile when it comes to positions like this. When there are weaknesses, when there are things to attack, the queen can just shoot over the board so quickly. So, for example, in this position, if you make a queen, then you take, and there's suddenly queen c4 check. And okay, again, the material balance isn't that clear. It's two rooks against a queen, but here I think white's pieces are so active and black's king so poor. This should be very, very good for white. Bjorn C says, why no black c5? I'm a bit confused by that one. By the way, if you've got move suggestions, then please do put a move number on it. It helps me to identify when you want to play your move. So in this position, this is very tricky indeed. Okay, there are better moves than c1. So, for example, knight d4 looks plausible, covering lots of squares. And then I thought knight d3, at least it covers here, and then maybe bishop takes a3, but that bishop kind of looks weird here. When I was looking at stuff like rook takes a1, rook a1, or maybe bishop takes b7 simply. But I just felt that, I mean, no matter what engines say about this position, I felt that in practical play this is far easier for white to play than black, and I'm not surprised that Nepomniachtchi actually rejected this continuation, and I think he found a very sensible move. Instead of going in for these complications, which I think are far easier for white to play than black, he played queen c8. Very good move. It forces the queens off, that's why it's a good move. So after queen takes, well, there's no alternative. If white tries to avoid the exchange of queens, let's say queen h4, then you can simply take. Black is just a piece up in this position. So white has to take and take on d3, and after this trade, well, we reach an endgame where material is level, and basically the position is about equal. I was even thinking Kramnik might be slightly better because his knight looks pretty good on e4. Mr. Tambourine Man is saying queen c8 was played after a 30-minute think. Well, shows that, I think that shows that Nepomniachtchi is very ambitious actually, because I think, it's clear that this ending is roughly level. There are too few pawns on the board. I'm just going back to what Bjorn C says means 19c5. Okay, let me just go back to that position and see here. Oh, you mean c4. I guess you mean c4 to protect this pawn. I guess that's your idea. Well, I think I can probably just give a check and take that pawn, and I think I'd be pretty happy about that. So I'm afraid not that one. Okay, Queen c8 after a 30-minute think, according to Mr. Tambourine Man. But this position is about equal. But then something very strange happened. Nepomniachtchi played very sensibly. Played rook d8, and it looks like pieces are just being traded off. Rook b1, also very sensible. But here, Kramnik very curiously lost concentration. First of all, he played h4, which is the kind of move you make in a blitz game. I mean, of course, it's not bad. I mean, it'd be nice to sort of eventually squeeze these pawns, perhaps. And of course, you're giving your king some room. But after b5, suddenly this position is somehow not so clear, because this one is perhaps just a little bit weak. b5 was a very good move indeed, and I think it would have been much better with hindsight. It's easy for us. With hindsight, I think it would have been better for Kramnik just to play b5, and then probably pieces will be traded in the middle, and I can't see this game being anything other than a draw. Well, I might play h4 in this position. But with this knight on e4, white is so solid. I mean, I don't think it makes any odds that black has an extra pawn on the queen side. If black is even careless, white can stand better here. If one of these pawns becomes isolated, but it should just be a draw. But I think because the position was so simplified, I suspect Kramnik just kind of lost concentration. And after this move, and again, bishop f1 I don't particularly like. After a6, well, I think maybe the best move is simply to put the bishop back on g2. I think you should probably just do this. But instead, Kramnik played knight c5. Okay, I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to turn this into weakness, but this is kind of pie in the sky. After rook d2, I think Kramnik realised that if he's not careful, he can really suffer in this position. Suddenly, think of the black squares. And this is what happened. Knight e3, and now bishop d4. Excellent move. And I think it would take a very brave man to take the pawn on a6. But maybe Kramnik should have done this. And just tried to survive the attack, but there's no doubt that black has a pretty tasty attack after this. For example, here, and okay, you're going to take on f2 soon, maybe immediately. Is that possible? We'll take here first. Basically, f2 is caving in, and white's pieces are a long way from home, so you could play like this and hope for the best, but I can understand why Kramnik didn't want to do this, and he tried to somehow keep hold of the position. But it got worse. After knight e4, suddenly he found himself in trouble. Toshin says white's white-squared bishop belongs on the Milky Way diagonal, h1 to a8. That's a good description, the Milky Way diagonal. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Toshin. I think Kramnik just lost concentration. Rubin says, could you please tell us something general about the Entfernter Freibar? For me, it's only important in pawn endings. Well, okay, the Entfernter Freibar, the distant past pawn, Rubin is asking me to discuss. Well, okay, if we can talk about distant past pawn, it's not just important in king and pawn endings, as we're about to see in this endgame. But my feeling is that the distant or outside past pawn, I think it's slightly overestimated in many positions. So if I'm just going to go back to this position, here I don't, this distant pass pawn, well, it hasn't been created yet, but it has no bearing on the position at all. And if I can isolate one of those pawns, I might be able to win them. So the distant pass pawn is a double-edged sword. Sometimes it can be weak simply because it's isolated. Of course, I would like to have one in the king and pawn ending. And later on in this game, we'll see that the distant pass pawn plays a very strong role, but that's because the position is greatly simplified. So if I can just come back to this position, so that after this, suddenly Kramnik is losing a pawn. Now he seeks refuge in the opposite coloured bishop ending. And perhaps there was nothing better. And I have to say, I was very surprised at the result of this game. Again, when I was looking at this online, and I mean, we weren't really concentrating our commentary on this game, but I had kind of half an eye on this, and I was watching a few people making comments, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, this is dead easy draw." But actually, the problem is that Black's king is coming over very, very quickly to assist with the advance of these pawns, and it could well be that White is simply lost in this position because Black gets the pawns going too quickly, as we'll see. I think also one of the problems is, I mean, the only way I think for White to try and stop these pawns is to get the king over as quickly as possible. But the problem is that could leave these pawns rather vulnerable. You'll notice they're all on dark squares, and suddenly a bishop a1 or a bishop d4 and coming in could win a crucial pawn, which is also doesn't help Kramnik's defense. Goldax says, what do you think about 34 knight takes a6? Goldax, I don't know what I think about knight takes a6. Let's have a little look. Aha, I see. This position. Well, there's an interesting suggestion. I understand what you're trying to do, because often it's very difficult to win even a piece up with opposite coloured bishops. But there's only one side that can win this, and Black can play for a million years. So my feeling is that yeah, well, thing is, it's hard to say compared to the game. If the opposite coloured bishop ending is indeed lost, then this would be White's best chance. So it might be the best chance if the opposite coloured bishop ending is a draw, but I don't know. But yes, it can be difficult to win this kind of position with opposite coloured bishops, even a piece up with all the pawns on the same side of the board. It's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. Okay, so this endgame. Let's just have a very quick look at how Kramnik managed to lose this. So, very simple. The king comes over. Time Bandit 2 says, what about h5 to trade a pawn? Okay, I'm very quickly, and then I'm going to go on. Last idea, if you don't mind. Okay, let's have a look. So, okay, you can. Well, well, there are two things. I could just take and then sprint over with the king. And it just looks to me like this is, the king is too slow to me. I'm coming over way too quickly, it seems to me. Let me go back. So, okay, it's impossible for us to determine exactly, but compared to the game, it doesn't look like an improvement. Okay, here we go. So king across and a5. So this is the big idea. And now here comes a nice moment. So after f5, instead of taking, Black just steams on. And if f takes, then just b4 will win. And so on. So if pawn takes, then I think this, let me see, what's a winning move? I think we just play b3, that's right, and then we go home. Okay, so bishop c2 is played, and a3. So threat to play a2. So the bishop's got a cover, and now black simply took a pawn. And although Kramnik has managed to stop these pawns, unfortunately he now has 2 pawns down. And this is a very simple win because White's king can't control both. So in this position, it's a very simple win. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to put the pawn on b2 and then simply come over with the king to support that one. Very simple indeed.